This week on The Other Side, you're a racist, you're a sexist. Are you getting as tired of these boring old slurs as we are? We explore the psychology of the political tactics of the left in a segment you don't want to miss. Kamala Harris is now officially the Democrats' candidate for the US presidential election, but behind all that hype and joy, what does she actually stand for? She revealed it a bit this week and it's very scary. A new study from Canadian statisticians says the excess deaths we're seeing all over the world can't be caused by a virus. So what is causing them? We'll get into that as much as the censors will let us. Are some Aussie unions stealing workers' pay? One politician says they are. And Bettina Arndt joins me to discuss how women in Australia are becoming much, much richer than men. This is The Other Side. G'day Bendigo, g'day Toowoomba, and g'day Darwin and Alice Springs. You've got a big election happening this weekend, and g'day Australia. This is episode 325 of The Other Side for the weekend commencing Friday, August 23, 2024. I'm Damien Curry, and welcome. This is your weekly analysis of the best news and commentary to get you smart for the weekend and the week ahead without the woke, with a new show dropping on YouTube every Friday night at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. The bias of The Other Side is centre-right. We think the mainstream media is too left and we're trying to bring you the other point of view. Good old-fashioned, everyday, common-sense Aussie values, and we are fully transparent about that political perspective right up front. But we always try to get the basic facts right too. So let's go. Well, it's an exciting weekend for the Liberal Party with the Northern Territory election happening. They could actually win government somewhere on the mainland other than just the Brisbane City Council. Labor controls every single state on the mainland of Australia, and the Liberals have minority government even down in Tasmania. But the sad days for the party could start to turn around because their candidate for the Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, a woman by the name of Leah Finocchiaro, is looking very, very good. Current Labor Chief Minister Eva Lawler is in a bit of strife because of all the crime issues and other things happening up in the top end. Now, of course, in the Territory, it's the Country Liberal Party, so a slightly different entity. But I saw some of the debate between the two candidates, and Leah is a very strong performer, a smart, energised, articulate, switched-on woman. One of the best candidates I've seen in any election around the country lately for the Liberal Party. Given Senator Jacinta Price is also Country Liberal Party from the Northern Territory, I'm wondering if the whole party nationwide shouldn't hand over their talent recruitment to the Country Liberal Party of the Northern Territory. It seems to be where all the talent is. Or maybe it's because the talent can still get in there and rise to the top in the Northern Territory because, you know, the party hasn't been captured by career politicians protecting their own cushy political jobs and deliberately keeping the best talent out. The left like to accuse the right of being mean. Apparently we don't care as much as they do. I disagree. I think we care just as much, actually more. And we're more adult and balanced and sensible about it. Let's look at some facts about the Gazan refugee intake into Australia before we get into this next segment, because I don't want to get criticised for spinning this in any dishonest way. We'll use the left-wing Guardian Australia online news outfit as our source for this so that the left can't complain, all right? Now, the Guardian says that from the 7th of October last year to the middle of August, Australia has granted 2,922 visas to people from the occupied Palestinian territories. It quotes the organisation PARA, the Palestine Australia Relief and Action Group, as saying that almost all of those 3,000 visas, roughly, have been granted to family members of Australians. It says only an estimated 1,300 of those people granted visas have so far been able to make it to Australia. Almost all of those visas are visitor visas for 3, 6 or 12 months, under which you can't work, study or use Medicare. The rejection rate was about 70%, around 7,000 applications were rejected. But the real test of our kindness, actually, is how we compare, I guess, to other countries. Well, the UK has granted 168 protection visas to Palestinians, and the US has accepted 17 Palestinian refugees in the same period. But Para told The Guardian that that's not really comparing apples to apples, because those figures relate to people who've been given full permanent asylum in the UK and the US. Para says that other countries are, in fact, far more generous than us. The Guardian makes a big deal of this, implying that the other media, like the Australian and Sky News, haven't been giving us the full story. But they don't go on to then tell us how many temporary visas the US and the UK have actually handed out, saying only that Canada has increased its cap from 1,000 to 5,000, but with no information at all about how many have actually been taken into Canada. Or maybe the data was hard to find. I did have trouble, I got to admit, when I tried to find it myself. But the Australian newspaper did report on a couple of things that the Guardian kind of, just seemed to leave out. Like the fact that almost 400 of the Australian visas issued were not just tourist visas. Or the fact that Canada's immigration minister said in June that only 254 Palestinians had received temporary visas and 41 had received family program visas. The Australian also reported that France, which had accepted 260 Gazans by April this year, requires applicants to submit visa applications and undergo biometric tests in Israel, making it technically impossible for them to apply. You'd have to be almost sociopathically narcissistic to name your newspaper The Guardian. Is this supposed to imply that they're the guardians of truth? I wonder. They seem to be falling a bit short on that front. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm really getting tired of every single left-wing media outfit like the ABC and The Guardian and every left-wing political party like the Teals falling back on name-calling every time they get emotionally upset about an issue but find themselves without a rational argument. And it's always the same thing. It's always, you're a racist. Dutton is a racist. Trump is a racist. And it's always just plain wrong. Like the fake independent Zali Steggall from what is really the unofficial and unregistered Teal political party, the party that, in my humble opinion, deceived voters a bit before the last election by claiming that they were just backing independence. And then they deceived us again by pretending to be a centrist party when they were far, far more green and red than blue. Zali, or Teal for that matter, Zali is the member for the electorate of Warringah in the lovey-filled suburbs of Sydney's north. And you better pay attention.
And I would ask you to be silent. I have the floor.
Okay, you've got my attention. Just so you don't accuse me of playing that little soundbite out of context, she was just chastising the other side of the House, the Liberals, for interjecting. She was just about to tell us how kind and compassionate she was with a story about the real victims of Gaza and why we should be letting thousands of Gazans into Australia. Some people from the other side had the audacity to argue back. And it's true that they shouldn't have been speaking over her.
I would ask you to be silent.
The member for Cowper will cease interjecting.
We heard Order. You in silence. You can hear me in silence.
Order.
Stop being racist.
Leader of the Opposition. Order. Order. There is far too... The Leader of the Opposition is seeking the call.
Well, it was an offensive and unparliamentary remark and it should be withdrawn.
I'm just going to ask the member for Warringah if she made an unparliamentary remark to withdraw to assist the House.
Well, if I could have a clarification, is a description of language being racist an unparliamentary remark?
Just to assist the House so the debate can keep going, as have been previously ruled, just ask the member to withdraw and continue.
I'll withdraw to assist the House. And I would ask that the same respect be shown to me to make my contribution on the chamber that you were afforded. Something that does not seem to be a common occurrence when it comes to the opposition.
Order.
Again.
And so when the racism card doesn't work, you play the sexism card. Really? I mean, honestly, how long are we going to play this game? Every Teal in the chamber is a woman, and a financially and professionally successful woman at that. Beneficiaries of a culture and society that's been moving towards ever-increasing enlightenment and equality for hundreds of years. To cry racism and sexism in Australia in 2024 is really living in spoilt brat territory. Yet it's all that the left seem to do. They are a one-trick pony, and they seem to have nothing else of substance, well, nothing of substance really, to offer. If Zali had her way, we'd be opening our country completely to Palestinian refugees and everybody else who has a sad life story. Has she stopped and asked herself why we are the only country on earth taking 3,000 refugees? I think, as I said, Canada's taking a couple of hundred. Why would these refugees need to come halfway around the world to a non-Muslim country built on Judeo-Christian ideas with a vastly different culture to be resettled? Seriously. The real issue is that we have no faith in our own government and public service bureaucrats to screen these people properly. And we're not racist or dumb for saying that, thank you, Zali. We know that 90% of these people are probably lovely and fine, but it's the other 10% that we've got to worry about, the 300 out of 3,000 that might not be fine. It's bad enough that people on the left are so irresponsible and childish and emotionally driven in their thinking and their reacting that they would be so reckless as to assume every Gazan refugee comes from a nice family. But they always take it one step further. They then try to imply that we average normal Aussies in the centre or on the right are dumb somehow. After insulting us by telling us that we're racist and sexist, they then attack our intelligence as if we don't get the deeper things that they understand.
Because it's very easy to dehumanise people seeking safety. It's very easy to paint a brush that somehow they are all to be feared. But the reality is we are talking about parents caring about their children, children that are at risk of, that are in a horrendous situation.
Yeah, we get it, Zali. We're not heartless, we're not racist, and we're definitely not dumb. You are being naive and childish and hyper-emotional. Gazan refugees come from a culture massively different to ours. Many of them have been raised with ideas of hatred based on race and religion that are incompatible with our culture. Not all of them, but many of them. And you want to put them in Sydney tomorrow and think that there'll be absolutely no consequences or problem with that. Zali, you need to apologise to Peter Dutton, who's trying to act responsibly here, and to all the right-minded Australians that you've accused of being racist. And smart people of inner Perth and inner Melbourne and inner Sydney, I would suggest you send a message to Zali and all the Teals who pretend to be independent at the next election. They seem to have deceived us that they were independents when they seem to clearly act as a political party and are funded and supported as such. They seem to have deceived us that they were centre-right when in fact they are centre-left and left. How long are we going to let ourselves be taken for fools? Now I'm going to put my PR hat on for a second and just dissect for you what's going on here, because it's extremely emotionally manipulative and it's something that the left do all the time. They'll tell a story of one family, a nice family, or any victim of any sad situation. And that's okay, that's fine. That humanises the story, and it's important that we all remind ourselves that behind these difficult decisions that we have to make are actual human beings, so that we don't become heartless. But we still have to be grown up as adults when we make those hard decisions. And the left rarely remember that bit. Zali told the really sad story of a man named Muhammad and his family.
They were able to get out, and I met with them only a few weeks ago in my office in Manly. And they're beautiful children that deserve the opportunity to grow up, to go to school, to have an education.
Hear, hear. So, can you see the manipulation in that? I mean, who can disagree with the premise that every child deserves a safe home and an education? Nobody. So it achieves the purpose of framing the argument so that your opponent looks like that is what they're opposing. But they're not, of course. They're opposing terrorism and the risk and harm that could come to Aussie kids. This is important because the Liberal Party have lost about 9 out of the last 10 elections because they keep falling for this trick. And you'll always lose if you fall for it. Peter Dutton is probably the first person to stand up and call it out in a long time. The left will then typically go for the jugular with some more moral grandstanding that's totally off the point of the rational argument. They'll then accuse their opponent of extreme moral offence.
And so to suggest that Families like Mohammed's family are not deserving of being able to escape a war zone, of seek safety for their children, is offensive. And it goes against what it is to be Australian, which is to be there for people in need and to offer safety and security to people that deserve it.
See how that works? Pretty cool, but diabolical, and very offensive to the responsible people on the other side of this debate, who now find themselves on the receiving end of a truly vile and offensive attack. Being called a racist is pretty hideous. But of course, if you say you're offended, well, it looks like you have, if you say you're offended first, if you're the first one to say, well, we take offense, well, then it looks like you have the moral high ground. The only way we're going to fix this, folks, is by getting smarter ourselves. Alarm bells should ring very loudly every time you hear a left-wing politician call someone racist or sexist. Environmental vandal is another one that they like to use a lot. Anything to stop the debate being rational, grown up, or dealing with the facts of the matter. Sadly, it works on many people who are not grown up rational or know much about the facts of the matter. Alarm bells should have been ringing very loudly if you were watching the Obamas speaking at the Democrat National Convention this week in Chicago. Feelings, not substance.
Something wonderfully magical is in the air, isn't it? Yeah. You know, we're feeling it here in this arena, but it's spreading all across this country we love. A familiar feeling that's been buried too deep for far too long. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh my God, they are so good at this stuff. Feelings. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that feeling. Yeah, that good one you got right now. Get into that zone. That's right. Capture that. What she's doing there is getting the audience to reconnect with the feelings that they had when they voted for a husband and link that to Kamala. It's actually a pretty well-known hypnosis technique of neural association, what they call state anchoring.
The anticipation, the energy, the exhilaration of once again being on the cusp of a brighter day. The chance to vanquish the demons of fear, division, and hate that have consumed us.
Yes, that would be the division, fear, and hate caused by the philosophy of identity politics, a neo-Marxist left-wing philosophy that views everything as being about race, gender, and sexuality, precisely in order to divide people into tribes of us and them so that they'll vote for you, the Democrats, and see you as the solution to all their problems and hand over control of their lives to you. They do all of this with a big smile, of course. They tell you stories of their mother, as Michelle did, and how they rose above adversity. And of course, finishing by painting everyone else, especially their main political opponents, as racist.
See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black.
Then the crowd goes wild, and it gets even worse.
I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Oh God, it's so manipulative. An African-American woman who had a privileged life of academic and business success and then rose to become First Lady in a country that is clearly far less racist or sexist than possibly any other country on earth throughout history, still, after all her wealth, privilege and success, claiming to be a victim. Still playing the race card. Still playing the sexism card. Give me a break. Oh, and let's forget that the current vice president is a woman, and as the left like to say, a woman of colour. And in her official nomination acceptance speech before the Democrats, Democrats presidential candidate, without any Democratic Party process whatsoever getting her there, Kamala also made the usual waffly, substance-free motherhood statements.
everywhere I go, in everyone I meet, I see a nation that is ready to move forward, ready for the next step in the incredible journey that is America. I see an America where we hold fast to the fearless belief that built our nation and inspired the world. That here, in this country, anything is possible, that nothing is out of reach. An America where we care for one another, look out for one another, and recognize that we have so much more in common than what separates us.
There she is. All emotion, very little substance. The point is, folks, it works. This stuff will work. People won't be able to tell you why they want to vote for Kamala Harris. They won't be able to tell you a single thing that she's done in her 4 years as vice president or name a single policy that she stands for, but they'll just feel it in the pit of their stomach and in their vision for hope. They will believe that these manipulative, power-mad socialists will fix everything. A quick check of the polls this week, and 538.com's summary of US polls now has Kamala widening the gap again at 3.3 percentage points now ahead of Trump, 47 to 43.7. On a happier note for those on the right, Elon Musk did his own little poll on X, which he admitted is highly unscientific. But after almost 6 million votes, the gap was actually huge. Trump ahead 73 to 27. Even with the conservative skew of X these days and the unscientific nature of a dial-in poll like this, that is an impressive lead. But as they say in politics, the only poll that matters is on the big day. These are scary times indeed, but not for the reasons many people think. So people have been asking us for some time how they can support the show. Well, now you can, and help yourself at the same time. I never want this show to be a charity constantly asking viewers for money, so I'm very happy to share that our new sponsor, Private Internet Access, is on board. With all the big government clampdown on online speech lately, you are taking a big risk if you don't have a VPN. That's a virtual private network. And it blocks spying eyes in big government or big corporate from seeing your IP address and hacking into your data. Now, it's super easy and cheap to set it up. It's not technical. Even I could do it. And even if you already have a VPN, you should consider switching to these guys, because since I have had zero reduction in my internet speeds, which was a bit of a problem with the one I was using before. And I don't even have to think about this one. It's just on automatically whenever I turn on my computer. And even better news is that the other side has secured a special deal for you, which will get you set up for 83% off the usual price and with 4 months free. And get this, that brings the price down to less than $3 a month. It is absolutely amazing. So jump on it now, sign up to our special deal, and help support us by supporting our sponsors. piavpn.com/otherside. piavpn.com/otherside. So what does Kamala Harris actually stand for? We've spoken a lot on this show in the past about how politicians from the Greens or Labor or the Democrats in the US or the Liberals in Canada always resort to the cheapest, dumbest play of all to win votes in elections. Something even worse than just calling everybody racist deplorables. Playing on the fact that most ordinary people don't have time to think about economics or didn't get taught economics at school. And so most people don't understand how the economy works, where money comes from, or how prices are set in a free market, liberal, democratic country. Most good citizens are too busy trying to do what they do best in their line of work. And we assume that other good people are doing the same in the government bureaucracy and politics. Except they aren't. Bad actors, mostly on the left of politics, are constantly exploiting those gaps that we all have in our knowledge, and they're taking advantage of us. The main way that parties like the Greens, the Teals, Labor and the Democrats take us for mugs is by trying to sell us the lie that the economy can be simply controlled by government laws. That if they say, we shall have price controls on these things, that will automatically fix inflation. But it doesn't. We should all get taught this in school, but I think I was about 35 at least before I fully understood it, and I'm not the sharpest knife I know, but I'm not the bluntest one either. It's kind of weird that we don't get taught this at school, kind of like it's almost deliberate. But prices are set by the free market. They are not set by the government. How? Well, basically it works like this. People will only make stuff or do stuff for as long as someone will pay them to make or do it. Now, the minute it becomes too expensive and not worth it, they'll stop. So that's how our whole system works in the free world. That's what economists talk about when they use the term supply and demand. If people want stuff, the price goes up, and that'll encourage other people to make that stuff until too many people are making that stuff, or too much of that stuff is being made and the price goes down, or until people no longer want it and the price goes down. Everything balances into what economists call the fair market price, or price equilibrium. This makes for a very efficient economy. It is an amazing system, and it all happens absolutely naturally. No politicians needed. It works so well that even communist countries have had to accept the fact of reality and allow free markets to a certain extent. Because if they don't, they just go broke out of inefficiency. So the lefty pollies, though, don't want you to know that you don't need them, or that things would work much better if we had about 90% less government than we do, because they want control for themselves, not good governance for you. And even in 2024, people still fall for the old trick. They think that politicians who say stuff like this are being nice, when actually they're being about as manipulative and evil as you can possibly get.
I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
Now, we know that Kamala isn't a business person like Trump, and she isn't the sharpest knife in the drawer, but it's price gouging, Kamala, not price gauging. God help us. She's also going to do rent control, by the way, as controlling the price on food, and she's going to build new homes. Does that sound familiar?
By the end of my first term, we will end America's housing shortage by building 3 million new homes and rentals that are affordable for the middle class. In addition, while we work on the housing shortage, my administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000 to help with the down payment on a new home.
So it sounds fantastic, and it will work to help her get elected. These people waving those placards there, they don't know their economics. Or maybe they do know their economics, but they know their evil politics better. But it won't work after she's president. It will be a disaster, as Fox News host Jesse Watters explained to his audience.
But now she wants to pick the price of bacon? Kamala knows what a head of lettuce should cost, even though she hasn't been in a grocery store in 4 years. The princess just waves her magic wand and poof, a loaf of bread's $2.50. Why didn't anyone else think of that? Well, a lot of people did. And it's been a disaster every time. 2,000 years ago, Roman Emperor Diocletian put in a price control, punishable by death. Prices went up, and merchants started selling goods on the black market. The Soviets tried it too. That ended in bread lines. Even President Nixon gave it a shot.
The time has come for decisive action, action that will break the vicious circle of spiraling prices and costs. I am today ordering a freeze on all prices and wages throughout the United States for a period of 90 days.
The result of that was massive shortages and even more inflation. It has to be. It's natural economic law. Trying to legislate against free markets and pricing is like trying to make laws against gravity because you don't like getting out of bed in the morning. But why is it that politicians never learn? Well, they do, but then the desire to hold on to power gets them, and they know that people don't understand basic economics. Argentina spent 75 years going from one of the richest countries in the world to a poverty-riddled mess with hyperinflation under socialism before they recently woke up and elected a free market libertarian to fix everything. Other South American countries have been similarly destroyed by socialism, as we well know, because the people love socialism in the Spanish colonial world. And if you don't go along with socialist ideas, well, you're an evil capitalist bastard, right? Fox News' Jesse Waters explained it brilliantly.
In Venezuela, Hugo Chavez went on a socialist spending spree, which sent food prices skyrocketing, so he had the same idea as Harris and capped food prices. And Venezuela went from one of the richest countries in the world to one of the poorest. Price controls aren't a new idea. They're just a bad one.
It is a device that governments have repeatedly resorted to try to cover up the effects of their own policies. It is offered as a cure for inflation. It is not a cure for inflation. It has never been a cure for inflation. It is an alleged cure that is far worse than the disease.
That's the economist Milton Friedman, probably the most influential economist of the 20th century. The left do not like him. That's fine. But arguing against his ideas, again, it's like arguing against air and water. You can't change the facts just because you don't like them.
But Kamala thinks she can just wave her magic wand and voila, capitalism disappears. This was her campaign's first opportunity to show us her economic vision, and it turns out she's blind as a bat. We all waited a month to hear what Kamala believed in, and she finally told us it's communism.
Exactly. A month of hype and waffle before the American people got any kind of specifics about what her economic policies might be. And as Jesse Waters says, it turns out to be good old dumb 1950s communism.
After Kamala said she was going to choose the price of cheese, Bernie Sanders released a statement calling it a very important step forward, or backward. The princess doesn't understand basic math. She thinks supply and demand means when she demands something, the intern supplies it.
Ouch. But that is spot on. It's just like all of our politicians from major parties who've never run a business or held a job where they're responsible for direct commercial results. Labor's ex-union officials and lawyers, or the Liberals' ex-political staffers and lawyers, they have no clue. And Kamala thinks supply and demand is when she demands something and the intern supplies it. That is brilliant stuff. Waters goes on to remind everyone watching his show that people didn't get to vote for Kamala in the usual primary or caucus process that political parties in America use to choose their candidates. She was just anointed and appointed at lightning speed by the Bidens, the Clintons, and the Obamas without any primaries. So nobody got to hear her policies before she got the top job. And that is terrifying.
Kamala's communism would have come out in a primary. And for those Democrats watching, a primary is when politicians compete with each other and do interviews, take questions from voters, and tell us what they believe in. But why bother with democracy when coronating a mysterious princess makes it easier on the Democrats and much easier for her?
Kamala also announced she's going to magically build 3 million new homes and solve the housing crisis. Where have I heard that before? And she's going to do a $25,000 first home buyers grant. And we all know that that works to fix the housing crisis, don't we?
Do you hear that sound? If you listen closely, that's the sound of every home seller raising their listing price by 25 grand. This just drives home prices up more. Just like electric cars or college tuition, when the government subsidizes, the price goes up and the country goes deeper in debt.
Jesse Waters on Fox News this week. You know, it's not that hard to understand when somebody explains it to you and you've got time to pay attention to it. But the Greens, the Teals, Labor and all the other lefties around the world are counting on the fact that you won't have time to pay attention and understand. And that should tell you all you need to know about how these people operate and how they manipulate us. You can catch us here on The Other Side every Friday night from 7 p.m. on YouTube. If you'd like to support us, the best way is to support our sponsors. One of them is Public Internet Access, piavpn.com/otherside to get 83% off your internet security and protect yourself. Another way to support us is to tell all your friends about the show. that they can catch up on the best news and commentary of the week without the woke in just an hour by watching or listening to The Other Side every weekend. Yes, you can listen. We're on all major podcast platforms too. And also, you can subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It's absolutely free. Just hit the subscribe button and the little bell, and that will notify you. The little bell's important. That'll notify you when we post anything. And also, if you're feeling generous, do feel free to send us a super thanks donation. You can do that by clicking the little $ thanks icon under the video frame on YouTube. And you can also follow us on X, Twitter, at The Other Side on X. It all helps. Just for Other Side viewers, you're going to get 83% off the usual price and 4 months free. That brings it down to just $2.68 a month, a half a cup of coffee. It's amazing. You just got to use the special access code that you can see on your screen right now. That is piavpn.com, piavpn.com/otherside, and you'll get that discount if you do that, okay? It's super easy to download, super easy to get running. Literally just takes a few minutes, and it's always on. It didn't slow down my internet speed one bit. And a side benefit is that I can now watch Netflix using my Netflix account as if I'm in any country in the world, which opens up the whole global Netflix library to me. And best of all, by using PIA, you're supporting The Other Side in a very big way and helping us to keep on providing an alternative to the mainstream media focused on Aussie news. piavpn.com/otherside. Get on it. Earlier in this week's show, we were talking about how those on the left side of politics like to deceive and manipulate. But there is a mob who are far less ethical than even left-wing politicians and bureaucrats. Unions. Well, not all unions, some are good, but just the ones that don't support their members, but instead charge them a fortune in union fees so they can do all sorts of political things with the money that serve their own interests. Some unions you may have heard of in the news lately, allegedly even getting involved in using bikie gangs for their enforcement games and running protection rackets that would make the mafia blush. I actually thought we already had laws in this country against violence, threats, standover tactics and extortion, and that these were being policed and enforced properly by good, honest police, good, honest lawyers, judges and politicians. But I must have made a mistake. Maybe I'm not watching enough Netflix shows that normalise such criminality in Western culture these days. Silly old me, I'm so old-fashioned. Got to get hip with the cool kids on Breaking Bad and The Sopranos, I guess, the anti-heroes. So much cleverer and wiser and cooler than us boring, law-abiding Christian folk, or Jewish folk, or whatever. Anyway, after decades of allowing all this union thuggery to go on in broad daylight, our intrepid Labor Party leaders have decided to come to the rescue by finally pretending to notice and pretending to do something about it. Hooray! A bill was passed in Parliament this week, after being completely stalled last week, that will see all branches of the CFMEU forced into administration. This week started with the Liberal National Coalition and Labor uniting to accuse the Greens of, quote, blocking every single effort to try to hold corruption, lawlessness, thuggery in the union movement to account, unquote. That call came from Liberal Senator Simon Birmingham. And Labor joined in the attack on the Greens, no doubt delighted to have the focus shifted off them for a split second. Last week, the Coalition and the Greens had united against Labor and knocked back the new laws. But for different reasons, the Liberals said that the laws didn't go far enough, while the Greens argued that they needed more time to look over the detail. Detail? I mean, since when have Greens ever cared about detail? Don't you just go with the vibe of the thing? Work out which side the rich, productive people are on and just, vote against that? Anyway, here's how the ABC reported on the news that the bill had finally passed this week.
On the back of allegations the union's been infiltrated by organised crime, the federal government's pushing new laws to force it into administration. It's now secured the coalition's support by agreeing to a minimum 3-year period of administration, additional parliamentary scrutiny, potential life bans for officials, and the blocking of union money to political parties.
The time for corruption, criminality, violence and bikies in Australia's construction union and the industry is coming to an end.
ABC News reporting there, and that was Murray Watt, Albo's Workplace Relations Minister, looking tough, cracking down on the alleged criminality that everybody knew was going on, but nobody did anything about for years until 60 Minutes put the spotlight on it. So Labor and the Coalition agreed to pass the law and it went through 39 votes to 10. But I want everyone to pay attention to this next bit. The Greens did not support the bill. And more importantly, they would not rule out accepting future donations from the CFMEU. Let me just repeat that. The Greens, the moral high ground, holier than thou party, would not rule out accepting future political donations from the CFMEU. You'd think part of the new laws would be that the CFMEU would be banned from giving any public donations to political parties while under administration. That's just logical and obvious, right? But no, that's not in the new laws. Amazing. The very next day after the laws were passed, the CFMEU said it was looking at a possible High Court challenge. This is an unprecedented attack on unions, said a whole bunch of far-left unions. Don't these politicians realise that we unions are above the law? They didn't actually say that last bit, that was just me editorialising. But here's what they did say. The Australian reports that the United Firefighters Union are backing the possible High Court challenge. The Electrical Trades Union in Victoria have said that the laws are a betrayal of the union movement by the Labor government. And a number of state union secretaries from different unions across the country were appalled at a lack of due process. Oh, lack of due process, right. But the actual alleged criminality that we need to investigate, that's fine, right? No problem with that. Anyway, folks, one thing is for certain. Honest, hard-working, law-abiding Aussies like you and me will keep on paying. We will keep paying 30 to 50% more for every public building that gets constructed above fair market price. Why? Because of the cosy nexus between the Labor Party, the CFMEU, and the builders themselves as they cooperate to extract more of your tax dollars than they should get if we just had an open, competitive tendering market and a free and fair market for wages in the building industry. I'm very cynical about anything actually changing, but I guess we'll see. It'd be nice to see a royal commission with teeth though, Elbow. As much as I hate layers of bureaucracy and endless commissions of inquiry into things, the bureaucrats should just be getting on with fixing them. We do, in this case, probably need a royal commission so that they have the power to really dig into the depths of this and get to the bottom of all the corruption. But of course, that could impact the left-wing political parties badly, so, you know, Elbow's just waiting for all this to blow over and for you to forget about it. Meanwhile, back on planet Earth, coal miners in New South Wales and Queensland want to get wages back that they claim have been stolen from them. One Nation revealed in February that there had been underpayment to coal miners working under the Black Coal Industry Award. One Nation Queensland Senator Malcolm Roberts described these underpayments as wage theft in Parliament. Now, the Independent Workers Union of Australia, an alternative union to the CFMEU, has been looking at individual cases of alleged underpayments of its members and have lodged complaints with the Fair Work Ombudsman. They say that some miners have been underpaid by more than $120,000. The Independent Workers Union says it isn't the mining companies that might be guilty of these claims of wage theft, but the union they were a member of, none other than the CFMEU. To explain all of this, I'm joined by the Independent Workers Union of Australia's Coal Miners Campaign Coordinator, Ken Phillips. Ken, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I don't quite understand this. How can a union be responsible for the underpayment of its own workers? What's going on here?
Coal miners should, over a year, working 44-hour weeks, Saturdays, Sundays, etc., should be earning, as a full-time employee, the $100,000 plus holidays, plus.
Yeah.
If you're employed as a casual, you should be earning $125 getting paid to you because you don't get holidays. Very simple.
Yeah, you don't get the benefits of being a full-time employee, so you should be getting that extra payment.
Cash.
So why weren't they getting the cash, Ken? What happened?
Pretty straightforward. CFMEU deals with labour hire companies to pay them less, took those deals to the Fair Work Commission, and the Fair Work Commission stamped them.
So the Fair Work Commission's to blame here then?
as well as.
So what's in it for them, though? I mean, why would the CFMEU agree to something like that?
Good question.
Okay. So we have to leave that there, I guess.
Now, I can tell you, I am dealing with each of these coal miners on the phone, talking, getting their life history, the whole lot. I say to them, do you reckon that you were being screwed over? Too bloody right, they say.
So how many of them are there? How many of them are there, Ken, do you think, across the country that have been affected by this?
We have gone on the records of looking at the Long Service Leave Board, and at minimum, we believe that there are 5,000 coal miners who've been screwed over. The numbers could easily exceed 10,000, but let's take 5,000.
And how much would be the average amount that they've been screwed over for, as you say?
$110,000 is the average at the moment.
Okay, so you're talking $110,000 times 5,000. That's $500 million. Who's going to pay this back?
Well, as far as we're concerned, it should be the three parties that were involved. It should be the labour hire companies, the CFMEU, who have got buckets of money, and the Fair Work Commission.
Okay.
That's fair enough. The three of them were all in it together. Nice little gang, all got heaps of dough.
Where do you go from here then, Ken? What's the next step for this? Where is it heading?
There's no question the only resolution is a parliamentary get their act together, pass legislation. The ALP are wanting this to go away. We're turning around to Peter Dutton. I sent him a letter quite recently that said, what are you going to do? You've been saying recently that you're the party of the worker. Okay, prove it.
Yeah, here's the chance to really to demonstrate that.
Show us what you're really on about. Are you interested in workers? Are you interested in justice for workers? Are you interested in stopping clear, evidential wage theft? Show us, and what we want you to do is do one very simple thing, even though you're in opposition. One simple thing. Commit to legislation to get this fixed and to get the workers their money back.
All right. The Independent Workers Union of Australia, the IWUA. You are a relatively new union. You're part of the Red Union group, which is becoming stronger and stronger by the day. More and more people joining. Ken, tell us a little bit about the IWUA and how people can join, I guess, if they want to change unions. Is it okay to do that if you're coming off the CFMEU? I mean, how does it all work?
Well, it's very straightforward. We've got a website. You go onto our website. It's look up IWA Coal, and you'll see our coal campaign. I've had quite a number of people who have been CFMEU members up until recently, who have now joined us. Like, they're paying double what we charge. They're paying well over $1,500, $1,600, some of them $2,000 a year for the services of the CFMEU, so that the CFMEU can organise their underpayment.
Well, it's good to see a bit of competition. Good to see a bit of competition in the union movement. Well done. The IWUA, an option, an alternative there for you. But Ken, good luck with the campaign. There can't be a class action. Is that what you're saying? It can't go through the courts. It's got to be political now?
There was a class action attempted. The union with lawyers, with the CFMEU with lawyers, with the labour hire companies and the Fair Work Commission have got the whole thing tied up in legal knots. There was an attempt to get a class action up and it collapsed. Now, class action lawyers, of course, wanted a cut of the action. We're not after a cut of the action. Join us. We'll fight to get your money back, and we don't want any of your money. It's your money. You deserve it all.
All right, Ken, thanks very much for your time. Ken Phillips from the Independent Workers Union of Australia.
Thank you.
And you can catch us right here on The Other Side every Friday night from 7 p.m. on YouTube. If you'd like to support us, the best way is to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button and the little bell too, and that'll notify you when we post anything. Also, if you're feeling generous, feel free to send us a super thanks donation. You can do that by clicking the little $ thanks icon under the video frame on YouTube. Every little bit helps, so even a couple of bucks is great if you've enjoyed the show tonight. You can also follow us on X, Twitter, at The Other Side on X. It all helps. Well, this next story is quite astounding, and it will shake the very foundations of a lot of people's thinking about wealth in Australia and who holds the wealth and who holds the power. The patriarchy is definitely not in existence anymore. Women are poised to take charge of $3.2 trillion in the next decade. That's about $320 billion a year, as Australia faces the greatest wealth transfer in its history. So says a report from the leading private bank, JB Ware. Now, this report is called The Growth of Women and Wealth. And in short, it says that $3.2 trillion is going to be passed on from one generation to the next in Australia between now and 2034 as baby boomers pass away. And most of it will be handed over to women, not to men. Not only will baby boomer families pass on money, the report says, but it is projected that for at least 2 decades after inheritance, women will be in charge of the family finances as they outlive their partners. Women are getting richer. So we'll have a look at this. Women are outliving men in huge numbers at the moment. In the 54 plus age group, there are 10% more women than men, and this widens to 16% at 70, 33% at 80, and 53% at 85. JB Ware says that wealth is also being passed on to the oldest daughters to manage more than the oldest sons now. The main controller of wealth at the point of transfer is 50% more likely to be the eldest daughter than the eldest son. So 31% for the eldest daughter, 22% for the eldest son, you can see in that chart there. And in addition to the wealth transfer via inheritance, billions of dollars in existing wealth are being redistributed via divorce. There were sadly more than 50,000 divorces in Australia last year, and the Australian Institute of Family Studies found that separation rates among couples married for 20 years or more rose 5-fold over the past few decades. 10,000 couples fall into the high net worth category. They control about $30 billion of wealth, and no less than half of that sits in the hands of women. So hooray for the sisterhood. Massive gains have been made here financially. Or maybe it should be hooray for the brotherhood, because men no longer have to carry the great burden of being the financial providers. But my next guest says it's kind of weird that feminists aren't promoting and celebrating this success for women. Yes, it's none other than the champion for truth in the gender debate and a fair go for blokes, Bettina Arndt. Bettina, welcome to the show once again.
Thank you, David. Lovely to be here.
So shouldn't modern third wave feminists just be shouting from the rooftops about this and be totally thrilled and excited to learn that they're no longer the oppressed victims?
No, we have all the loot. Isn't it fantastic? But you won't hear much about this, Damien, because this goes against the feminist narrative. I mean, it's interesting for me looking back that once feminists were all about celebrating the fact that we were doing so well and we were, knocking through the glass ceilings and, getting money for ourselves and so on. But suddenly they changed and started whinging about how badly off we were. And that's been the major narrative for the last, I think couple of decades. That women are missing out, that women are poor, women are impoverished, women don't have enough super, women are homeless. And that's the big push at the moment.
There are, a significant number of women over 50 that can't get work or that are living in poverty, forced to, sleep in their cars, et cetera, et cetera. Is that a phenomenon that's happening? And do you think this research really concerns rich people? It's more about where the wealth of rich people is going rather than the wealth of the poor.
Look, obviously there are issues. There are poor women, there are women who are living on their own and who can't support themselves. There's no question about that. But we're seeing a lot of beat up there. I mean, they're endlessly now campaigning about the huge increase in women's homelessness. And that is an increase from a very low base. I mean, it has gone up. And they never talk about the fact that the vast majority of people sleeping rough on our streets are male. Homelessness is absolutely predominantly a male problem, but they don't want to admit that, of course. And they are persuading all the big charities to do fundraising for women's homelessness. We've actually once gone in and campaigned about that and gone and talked to some of these big organisations who are campaigning on women's homelessness and saying to them, can you at least tell the truth here? No. It's all, poor women are much more a better means of, getting money out of people than poor men. No one cares about men. We know that.
All right. So the men are basically obviously worse off because of this wealth transfer. You're saying in your article, you wrote a fantastic piece on this for The Spectator, that you don't necessarily have to wait for the man to die or for there to be a divorce for that wealth transfer to happen, that it's actually happening through spending right now. And I think you mentioned that women account for 85% of all retail purchases, and travel is dominated. 64% of travelers worldwide are female. 80% of travel decisions are made by women. So women do have a lot of power over the cash already.
Oh yeah, we do all the spending. I mean, it's an absolute joke complaining about women's lack of wealth when, if you're the one who is in charge of the purse strings, who makes the decision about whether you buy a new car or a new property, obviously, that's where the real power lies, doesn't it? And they don't talk about that either. I mean, if you look I loved it. I was looking at and now there was an analysis about property. Women are now owning more property than men overall. And one of the analysts discussing this said, it's very interesting that women's empowerment in terms of property happens later in life, which of course is when the big increase, she was talking precisely about the increase in divorce rates where women take men's houses,
Bettina, before we go, I want to talk about the big conference because it's coming up this week. I'm very happy to be speaking, coming down to Sydney for that. It's August 31, the Presumption of Innocence Conference. If you haven't heard about it, get online. We'll put the website up on the screen now, but make sure you do come along and join us if you are concerned about these issues of the presumption of innocence seem to be losing its relevance and power in our judicial system. Tell us a little bit about who's speaking at the conference, and it's all day on Saturday. That's August 31 in Sydney for anyone who wants to come along.
Yeah, we're doing really well. I mean, I think we're going to have a really full house. So if anyone wants to come along, you better get in there quickly. We've got people talking on a range of things. Obviously, what's happening in our justice system is the kernel, the essence of what we're talking about. But that's just a consequence of the way our society is being manipulated by the feminists. And we're seeing all our institutions misrepresenting data, constantly begging for more money, constantly lying about statistics, constantly demonizing men. And we'll be talking about that broader cultural shift as well. And the fact that is translating into an extremely unfair legal system, justice system at the moment, which is all tilted towards victims, survivors, i.e. women, and undermining the rights of accused men. But we also, I think the cultural issues are really important. The thing that I talk about all the time, that we live in an anti-male society and all this male bashing is playing out in our justice system.
Now, we did have a situation recently, Bettina, that the Law Society of Australia made a submission to the Law Reform Committee, or Council's review, because they're doing a review at the moment on the rules of evidence, trying to make things a little bit easier for the victims of rape and sexual assault to go to court and to be heard. However, that what's on the table is actually weakening the requirements for evidence and the requirements for the presumption of innocence. And the Law Society, which is the biggest organisation in this country for lawyers, was so concerned about this that they submitted a paper to the Law Reform Commission saying, be very, very, very careful here that you don't mess with the presumption of innocence and the rule of law and rules of evidence.
Yeah, I know. I was very pleased to see that for once, the big legal organisation standing up to this. And this is absolutely dire, what Mark Dreyfus is proposing. They're on their agenda, on the Law Reform Commission's terms of inquiry, consideration of whether they should move the whole adjudication of sexual assault to different court system. You know, kangaroo courts. We already have it across Australia at our universities. Secretive committees making decisions to throw young men out of university with no proper oversight, with no proper consideration of the rights, legal rights of the accused guys. I mean, that's what they'd like to do with our whole sexual assault area. I mean, so many really dangerous proposals are being considered by the Law Reform Commission. And what really worries me is, I mean, we've seen these lawyers standing up, but I think it'll all get pushed through because the lobby is all from one side. We have all the powerful women's groups who simply want more men locked up. And they're doing a really good job already. I mean, I'll be talking about the statistics showing the number of men in prison on remand that means they haven't even had a trial. And the huge increase there are the areas that the feminists are pushing, namely sexual assault and domestic violence. That's what's sending men to jail, and they're having been put into jail without even a proper trial. I mean,
it's frightening. It's terrifying.
It's terrifying. And no one is talking about this, Damien, and this is a unique opportunity. What we're going to be revealing at this conference is absolutely going to be horrifying, people. I
hope everybody joins us on Saturday in Sydney, August 31. It's a full-day conference. A lot of these issues are going to be discussed. They're very, very, very important issues. And men do have to stand up and start to fight back because we are getting into serious trouble if we're going to have committee. We saw what happened to Dave Pallo with the Human Rights Committee in Queensland. People just being hauled up on ridiculous, vexatious sorts of claims. And, people over these religious statements or refusal to do welcome to country. If we see that sort of kangaroo court type mentality come into play around accusations of domestic violence and sexual assault and rape, we're heading into extremely dangerous territory, as you said, Bettina. So
yeah, and it's incredibly exciting that we've got brave people, including you, David, prepared to come along and tell the truth about what's going on here. And it's a historic occasion. So I hope many people will join us.
Looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. Thanks, Bettina.
Thank you, David.
And that's all we've got time for this week on The Other Side, your weekly summary of the best news and commentary without the woke. Please remember to tell your friends about the show, and do please follow us on X and YouTube, and please smash the like, subscribe and every other button on all the platforms that you can. We drop a new show every Friday night at 7 p.m. If you're watching on YouTube. To make sure that you never miss any of our content, please hit that subscribe button below and hit the little bell because that'll notify you when we post new content, and it's all absolutely free to do that. But if you do like what we're doing, you would like to support us, there's that little $ thanks button, and you might have to click on the 3 dots under the screen here, and you'll see the $ thanks button. You can do that, make a super thanks donation to us, and we can keep on delivering for you. I'm Damien Curry. Bye for now.